Okay, guys, I'm pretty excited about this message. Although it's pretty short and straight to the point, I think the point that I'm making is very important, and I think it's a point that is going to be a changing point in the lives of some people that listen to this. It's definitely something that's going to wake people up, that's going to make people think, and it's going to cause people to look at things from different angles, from different perspectives. And rightfully so, the name of this sermon is going to be called Perspectives. It is what you make it. Perspectives. It is what you make it. And that's what I want to talk to you about. Looking at things from different perspectives and understanding that there are some things in life, even though there are some things you can't really control, there are some things, it's all about what you make of it. It is what you make of it. In other words, some situations, some scenarios, some things in life, it may start out a certain way, but you can make it into something else. You can change it and turn it into something better. Sometimes it is what you make of it. And that's what I want to talk to you about. But I got to let you know that as simple as this sounds, and it is pretty simple, there's a bit of a catch, and the catch is you have to be careful to not be so judgmental of people and things. You have to be careful to not be so judgmental, because when you are very judgmental, it makes it hard sometimes for God to use certain people or certain things to show you different perspectives. And in the process, sometimes it makes other people have a hard time looking at you in a different light. And sometimes them looking at you in a different light is a good thing. It's something that does need to happen, because sometimes people get the wrong idea of you, the wrong perspective of you. So as you open up and see things from other angles, it will cause things to birth in you, or birth out of you rather, that will cause other folks that see you in maybe a negative light, or a not so sure what to think of you light. They can now look at you from a whole nother perspective that they didn't see before, and they'll say, wow, there's more to this person than I thought. This person is way more awesome than I thought they were. But it's because I see them so different now for some reason. Now that I see this new thing in them, I see them totally different now. So in other words, not only will seeing certain things from different perspectives make your life better, but it will also cause others to see you in a whole nother light, in the light that God really wants them to see you in the first place. And so it can be life-changing for you, but life-changing for those around you as well. And it just makes things so much more prosperous and easier for you and everyone involved. So let's get into this. It's a story in the Bible that I don't think I've really gone over very many times in the past, in past sermons. It's going to be in 2 Kings chapter 4. And I'm going to be reading out of my Compass Bible translation. Usually, y'all know I usually stick to King James for the most part, sometimes amplified, but gonna read out of this Compass Bible and looking at verses, I believe 1 through 7. So let's get into this. It says this at the beginning. The wife of one of the prophet's disciples pleaded with Elisha. The woman said, my husband who served you is now dead. He greatly feared the Eternal. You yourself know this to be true. The creditor is now trying to take away my only 2 children and make them into slaves. Elisha says, what is it that you want me to do? Do you have anything of worth in your house? The woman responds, I don't really have much of anything. The only thing I have in my house that might be of any worth is a jar of oil. Elisha says, borrow as many large empty containers as you can. Ask neighbors for anything they can give to you. Be sure to collect a lot of them. Then enclose yourself in a room with only you and your sons. Pour oil into as many of the containers as you can. Set aside the full ones. The widow went away from Elisha and enclosed herself in a room with her sons, one at a time. Her sons held a container before her, and she poured. Soon all of the containers were filled. The woman said, "Bring me another container." But one of her sons said, "There aren't any left." It was then that the oil ran out. The widow then went back to Elisha, the man of God. And Elisha said, "Now go sell the oil and pay the creditor what you owe. Then your children won't be made into slaves, and you and your sons can live on the remaining money." So what we see here is this. First of all, the story starting out right off the bat helps prove my point. We see this woman, this widow, she has two sons. She's struggling because not only has her husband died, but there were some debts that needed to be paid, and she doesn't know how to pay these creditors off. And these creditors, she knows that if she can't find some way to pay them off with money, the creditors are going to come and legally take her sons as slaves. In other words, you won't give me money, so I'm going to take something that is worth something to you away from you as a way for you to be able to pay off the price. And she doesn't want her sons to be taken away, of course. So she comes across Elisha, the man of God Elisha, the prophet Elisha. And he's listening to what she's saying, and she's explaining her scenario. And he gets ready to present a solution, and he's saying, "Well, what do you want me to do? Wait a second. What is it that you have in your house?" He's like, "I'm not sure what I can do, but wait, I have an idea. What do you have?" And as they continue in the conversation, he gives her the directions on what to do to save her and her sons. What's my point? First is, he's not being judgmental. Elisha is not being judgmental. You see, today, one of the issues that we can have in the church world is that prophets, preachers, teachers, ministers, whatever, evangelists, apostles, whatever, people sometimes, when they're used by God, sometimes they get opportunity to go to other places, to go to other churches and preach or teach, or to go to certain events and give speeches and things like that. Maybe God sends them to go to someone and minister to them, or, pray for them, or give them, a prophecy or whatever. But sometimes, and not all, but sometimes some of these people, they get so arrogant, if you will. They get so high and mighty on themselves because they forget that their ability that they have, the gift that they have, is not something that they came up with themselves. It's from God. But they put God in the back of their mind, and they get so full of their ego and feeling like, "Oh, I'm all this, I'm all that, I'm amazing, all these people like me, all these people want me to come to their churches and homes and events and give a word and this, that, and the other." And what happens is they get used to going to bigger, nicer places with more people, or places with people who may have a little bit more money than others. That what happens is, if they get an opportunity to go somewhere where maybe it's a small church, not a lot of people will get to hear them preach, or it's somewhere in an area where it's mostly low income people, a lot of times they just kind of shrug that off. They put that on the back burner, like, whatever, why go there when I can go over here to this mega church? You know what I mean? Or this rich neighborhood, this rich church. And that's not how we're supposed to be. And then if they do go to the place where they didn't really want to go, they may not put in as much effort into the word as they would somewhere else. They kind of have an attitude with the people. They have this, I could be somewhere else other than here type attitude. And it's all because they feel like, well, I'm not going to get much out of them. They're not going to sow much into me. They're not going to donate X amount of money to me, so they're not really worth my time, so I just want to get in, get out, and move on. They have this "these people aren't worth my time" type attitude. So they can be very judgmental, and they can overlook the reality that there may just be someone at the place they don't want to go to, that if they were to go there and to meet them, it would be such a blessing. But they never consider what God may have in store for a person or people over here, because they're more caught up in themselves and how they benefit. So now it's not about going to a certain place because of the joy and the excitement that they once had of going somewhere and giving a word or ministering to people, or just feeling so honored that God has chosen to use them. Now it's more about themselves and who all is going to see them and what they're going to get out of it. How many hand claps and cheers they're going to get. So, what's my point? This man, Elisha, he's not being that way. He's not being judgmental. In other words, he doesn't have this mindset of, oh, well, she's a widow and she's struggling financially, so let me move on from her because listen, she can't help me. I mean, I can try to help her out, but she's not going to benefit me, so let me move on. Let me go on to the next one. But that's not what he's doing. He doesn't have that "let me move on to the next one" attitude based off of income. And because because he is willing to help this woman out, a miracle happens. Sometimes we miss out, or people of God miss out on miracles, on amazing things happening, because they care so much about going to the bigger crowds, or going to the crowds that have on the fancier clothes or have the most money or come from the nicest backgrounds. They worry about all this stuff, but overlook the fact that even though they want to go over here, the miracle might be over there. Okay. So I'm sorry, that's a mouthful right there. Sometimes you want to go over here, but sometimes the miracle is over there. We miss out on miracles because we have this "I'm better than them, they're less than me, they're beneath me, I'm better than that" attitude. Okay. But he doesn't judge. He decides to pitch an idea out there to her. So, because he's not judgmental, it sets the moment up not only for a miracle, but it sets the moment up for this woman to see something from a different perspective. What do I mean? Well, when he asks, "What do you have?" she just says, "Oh, I don't really have much in this house but this little pot of oil over here. That ain't nothing." So she thinks that something that she has really isn't much. But she gets ready to see what she has from a different perspective. See, yes, it's just a little pot of oil. But we know that in the Bible, there are certain things that sometimes, even though it's literal, can have a symbolic meaning. And as I've explained before, oftentimes oil can represent the anointing of God or the Spirit of God, which is why sometimes in the Bible, people, and even today, you see people a lot of times are anointed with oil. And so this takes place. She gets the oil because he said, "Hey, take this oil, pour it out into these vessels or containers," depending on the translation. Pour the oil out into these vessels until the oil runs out, and take whatever full containers you have and sell those containers of oil for money. Now, you would think she's not really going to get much to try to pay off debt, let alone live off of, because it's just a small jar, as it said in this translation. In King James, it says a pot of oil. When I looked the Hebrew word that came from up, it meant those things: pot, jar of oil, and it also meant a flask. And some of y'all know what a flask is. You can hold it with your hand just like this. It's just a little flask, kind of like in the westerns when they take the little, the little container, and it's kind of rectangular shaped, and it's got that top that you can unscrew off and they take a drink. Right? Y'all know what those look like. They're not very big, are they? So it's enough oil to fill up like a small pot or a small oil jar or a flask. It's not a lot of oil is the point. So it's probably not going to be sold for much. But what ends up happening is she is told to go and borrow vessels or containers from her neighbors. Her sons go and get the containers. They go in this room. It's just her and her sons in this room. And so she follows the advice of Elisha. And what she does is she takes the oil, this small container of oil, and begins to pour it in a bigger container. Now, if the original container, this jar that she has with the oil in it, is not that big, and she's pouring it into what is possibly a bigger container, it's not going to fill up that container, right? But we see it does. And then the next son brings another container, and she fills that one up. Here comes another container, and she fills that one up with the same little jar of oil. So not only does the small jar of oil fill up a bigger container, but she fills up multiple containers. And then to top it off, check this out. It would make sense for the oil in the original small jar, the oil would run out before all the containers are filled. But the opposite happens. All the containers are filled, and it's not until all the other containers are filled that suddenly the oil in the original small jar disappears. It quits flowing. That's it. It doesn't run out until the containers run out. So all the containers are full. These multiple containers are full off of this one small jar of oil. How does that happen? Simple. It was the miraculous. It was the anointing of God, the favor of God. God causes a miracle for this woman, for this little container, for the oil in it to be stretched so far that it fills up. In other words, it goes back to something I talked about not too long ago, that multiplication. Jesus came that we shall have life and life more abundant. He wants us to have life, but to have overflow. More than enough. And I explained how you have addition, right? He wants to add to you, because he lets us know that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. In other words, the thief comes to take away. The enemy wants to take from you, but he wants to add on to you. And a higher version of addition is really multiplication, just like a higher version of subtraction is really division, taking away in greater chunks. Multiplication is adding to in bigger chunks than just regular addition. That's what he did. He multiplied. He went past addition and multiplied the oil as it flowed. The amount remained consistent. It just kept multiplying as it was being poured out, to where it never ran out, and it didn't run out until all the other containers were full. So because she was willing to look at something from a different perspective and say, well, it's just a small jar of oil, but maybe, yeah, let me try it. Maybe something can come out of this, because she was willing to go from looking at it as, oh, it ain't nothing, it ain't much, to, well, maybe it is something. Maybe God can do something with this. All of a sudden, now she has enough oil to not only sell to get money to pay off the creditors that hold her in debt, but she has money left over for her and her sons to live off of. So she has sustained her life and the life of her sons, but now she has some left over, life and life more abundant. So let me say this. We know that our bodies, we are vessels or containers for God to pour into us. But you could also look at this story and realize that each vessel can represent not only how God will fill up all different kinds of people to use for his glory, but you could also look at it as each container can represent different aspects of your life. And what I mean is, God has enough to go around, enough oil, so to speak, to go around for every area of your life. For example, you may have good finances but not very good health, or you may have good health and not very good finances. You may be fine in health or finances, but you may be having trouble with your children. What I'm saying is, no matter what area of life you're struggling in, God has enough grace to help sustain you if you would just believe on him. And sometimes believing on him for miracles, sometimes it's not really miracle that you need, it's just mercy. But whether you need miracle or mercy, whatever it is that you need, if you believe on him, he can make a way. But sometimes in order for that to happen, you have to be willing to open up your mind and see things from different perspectives. If she would have only continued to look at that little pot of oil as nothing, she would have continued to have nothing. But because she was willing to believe that it was something, she ended up with a whole lot of something to sell. And so it helped her and her sons, and it benefited them greatly in the long run. So don't be so judgmental. Open your mind up. Be willing to let God show you some things from different perspectives so that you can see a big picture, and so that you can receive blessings, mercy, and maybe, you never know, maybe even a miracle in your life. Something to consider. With that said, I'll share some stuff with you. As you all see, I'm dressed in my little martial arts uniform here. I've been doing that since January, and of course right now I'm still a white belt. It's all good. I'm learning. I'm having fun. But it's been so much fun. And let me just tell you some stuff. So I was talking to a friend of mine Sunday, I believe it was, and we were just talking about some similar things to what I'm talking to you about right now. I was just talking to her about how I feel like God has been opening my eyes and showing me some things from different perspectives, and I'm really growing and learning and seeing more about myself. God knows more about us than we know about ourselves. And so what God will oftentimes do is he will show us. And that means sometimes showing us the not so good stuff about ourselves, the things that we need to allow him to work on in us. But then there are also other things that are not bad that he's showing us. He's like, hey, you think that this is what you're all about, but check this out over here. I know you'll like this. And you'll be thinking, oh, I don't know about that, God. And God's just like, hey, try it. Try this out. You might just like it. And then you're like, hey, I kind of like this. This is cool. But that's what we were talking about. And she was talking about, she noticed that in like over the years in the clothes that she was wearing, she just had certain colors she would wear. And then it was like God was nudging her to try out different things and try mixing and matching different things. And she was like, oh, I kind of like this. I kind of like that. And then there were certain patterns that she stuck to. And then she was like, oh, well, I kind of like these designs, in my clothes. And then she was talking about how recently she was out shopping with somebody, and this woman at the mall was selling these different little eyeshadow makeup colors, and she was seeing this purple one that was being put on, and she was like, oh, I kind of like it, but she wasn't going to buy it. And God was like, she heard God say, no, go ahead and try it. And sure enough, she tried it, and she liked it, and she ended up buying some. But she was just like, every now and then I might put a little, because I think it kind of looks cool on me. But prior to trying it, she didn't think it was for her. And sometimes we'll think something is not for me, it's not my style, and we'll find out it really is our style. And it'll trip us out sometimes. But you have to not be so judgmental. Here's what I mean. For me, a big thing that I was just not going to try was skinny jeans. I just wasn't going to have it because I've always been big into the big baggy pants. You know, growing up, I used to wear like the baggy Jinko jeans. You know what I'm talking about? And the trip pants from Hot Topic and all this other stuff. And I still wear some baggy pants because I love cargo pants. So I wear some baggy cargo pants. But I started trying out the skinny jeans and I kind of like them. I even remember I was a bit judgmental and I was just kind of like, oh man, these dudes you see around here, man, they get all dressed up and they got their hat all cocked to the side and they're always taking pictures and posting them on social media. They think they just so cool, right? That's what I would think. And now if you had me on Facebook, you probably noticed since about the end of last year, that's exactly what I do. I'm taking pictures and got like a little hat on over to the side and posing. You know, at the end of church service, I'm up on the church stage just somebody taking a picture from the distance. You know, I'm doing these poses and just all kinds of stuff. Used to, I'd be like, man, you know, you see these dudes driving these real sporty cars, just speeding all over the place. They got these Mustangs and Camaros and convertibles. They think they so cool. And now I'm like, man, I kind of want a Mustang with a drop top so I can ride around with my mohawk blowing in the wind, you know. But it's like the more I stop not being so judgmental. I stopped being judgmental the way I used to kind of be and think I got certain people all figured out. And it's like, man, now, you know, I kind of like this. Like at first I thought, man, that's not me at all. And I'm thinking, man, now I'm like, man, this is me. I like this. So just all different kinds of stuff. But I even thought I'm not a kid person. You know, I used to just be like, you know, I don't ever want kids. Like, I'm just not a kid person. And ever since I started this whole martial arts thing, since it's mostly kids in the classes, it's like I have such a heart for kids. I have such a heart to see kids excel and do well in the class and just, you know, and it's crazy. There was one boy that his dad was going to take him out because he had a grade that wasn't so good, but then he decided to leave him in. And when I first heard that he was going to take him out, it broke my heart because he was one of my favorite students there. And then when I found out he was going to stay, it was like I was just so happy for him. And I'm thinking, man, what is going on with me, you know? But then what really got me was last night in class, we were doing what we call sparring. And I guess you could say it's kind of like freestyle kickboxing or something. And of course, whenever I'm, you know, going at it with the kids, you know, I don't actually like hit them as hard as I would, you know, another adult or something. But, you know, we kind of, you know, freestyle fight with each other. And there was this one kid in particular. He just came right up to me when one of the instructors said we were going to start sparring. And he came up to me and he was just like, he looked up and he's like, I like sparring with you. And I mean, it just melted. I'm telling you, when I tell you it melted my heart was just melting, boy. It was melting my heart, Lord. I was just like, what is going on with me, you know? But it's just, since late last year up until now, I've been seeing all kinds of growth in me now and maturity and just seeing things from different perspectives. And my life is just so brighter and more enlightened and illuminated. And even last night, I was talking with somebody I go to church with, and he was like, you know, I can tell when you have a passion about something because there's such a glow in your face when you're talking about what you're passionate about. And so people see something new in me now, all because I was willing to not be judgmental like I used to be and be willing to see things from different perspectives and explore the new. And now people see it. They see what's in me outwardly now. They see, it's like they know it's me, but now they see these positive changes and outlooks and they're like, wow, this is cool. But this is what Jesus wanted us to have, not to just live and just wait to die and go to heaven, but to make the best of life now. But to really get the best of life, we have to be willing to let him show us different perspectives on things. And it makes our lives better. And it just flows out onto others, kind of like that oil, how it can just flow out of a container and just fall on to the next container and the next container. And it doesn't have to run out until all the containers are full. That's what it's about. Let me share this last thing, and I got to wrap this up. There's a tour, I don't know if y'all have heard about it, but there's a tour called the Warped Tour. It's sponsored by Vans, the skateboarding shoe company, Vans. It's called the Vans Warped Tour. And for years, many years, this tour would get together, and it's just a whole bunch of just different bands, different random rock bands of different genres of rock. They would come together and they would go on this countrywide tour every year. And I always wanted to go, but never really got to go. And this year they announced that this would be their last year doing the Warped Tour. So I'm thinking, if I don't get to go on this tour this year, if I don't get to go to one of these shows, I'm never going to get to experience it. I just want to go and experience this. So I'm thinking, okay, I really want to do this. And I'm talking to God about it, because I was up in prayer one night and I'm talking to God about it. And I'm like, Lord, I said, I really want to go. I said, but I know that this is something that is not necessarily focused on you. It's not like it's worship bands, but I really want to go. And I ended up having a vision later on in the day. And it was like, in this short vision, I was at a rock show, and it looked like it could have been the Warped Tour, because it was an outside show and there was like what looked like thousands of people. The band was over here on stage, but I wasn't looking at the band. Now the people in the crowd were looking at the band, and they had their hands up and they're like, yeah, cheering on the band. But instead of looking at the band, I'm looking at the crowd, and this boldness rose up in me, and this desire to pray for people came over me. And I took a step forward and I reached out like I was about to lay hands on somebody and pray for them, and the vision ended. And it took me back to a documentary I saw last year of a man named Todd White. And in this documentary, he had went to a rock show, and he had went around praying for people, and people were receiving healing. And I remember posting this video on YouTube and talking about how I would, or posting the video on Facebook and talking about how I would love to do something like that one day. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, I could do something like that. And then it was like God was saying, Kobe, you think that going to one of these shows is something that may not have nothing to do with me, but it can have something to do with me if you make it be about that. You could go out there and pray for somebody. You could go out there and tell somebody about Jesus. It is what you make of it. I'm going to pray us out of here. Heavenly Father, I thank you for another word. Lord, I pray that the people that need this word would dig in and enjoy it. I give you the praise, glory, and honor. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.